meeting of the SAC, March 2021. Let's begin by the adoption of the agenda with one modification. We're just going to postpone the approval of the February minutes to next month, since we didn't quite have enough time to review them. Motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Great.
I'll second it.
Who
right,
made the motion?
I think it was Sean,
Sean Grace.
Okay, thank you.
and then I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. All right, so we're going to move right to the report of the chair and vice chair, but before we do that, let's have, or as part of that, I want to introduce a new member, and I'll actually have you introduce yourself, Nikki, because I don't trust myself in pronouncing your full name. And maybe you could tell everyone who you are, where you're from, and all of that, please.
Right. No problem. Thanks, Kalina. My name is Nikki Gunene. I am an associate professor at Eastern, and I'm a new member of the committee. I got voted on about 2 weeks ago, I think, and I'm looking forward to serve.
Thanks, and welcome. All right, so shall we get on with the report? I have.
Could I ask one question first?
Sure.
Is there anybody from the system office that's with us at the meeting now? Do we know?
Today, I don't believe so. Let me check through.
I am here, but it's Pam. I'm just here just to learn more, but I have no active role, unless you have a specific question for me.
So Pam, I've gotten so used to
Okay,
seeing
thanks.
your name, I'm thinking you're on the committee.
just don't assign me anything. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's move on to reports of the chair and vice chair. I kind of have it organized by committee meeting and event. So I guess we'll begin in sort of chronological order with the BOR Finance and Infrastructure Committee, and that's you, David. Though I was there also.
Good. Well, it was an interesting meeting. The agenda basically was the question of tuition and fees, which are being held basically constant for the upcoming year, and that was unanimously approved, and I think that was a positive development. However, there was also one agenda item, which was in section 3, informational items, community college merger update. I was a little surprised to see it because I'd sort of be quiet during this meeting. It was mainly on the tuition, and I didn't see any problem, and fees, and I didn't see any problem with that. That said, David Jimenez brought up the question that he wanted the board to be able to respond to faculty criticisms of students first. And that, of course, was, I guess, an indirect invitation. I took it at that. And basically what I said at that point was, yes, it is time that the board seriously considers the faculty criticisms of students first. And in a nutshell, what I said was, the system office with board approval has done a certain number of actions. They've reduced the college presidents to CEOs. They've created 3 regional presidents with staffing, and they've done that within the current existing structure of the 12 community colleges. And what I pointed out was that there are 2 things, baseline things, which faculty are not going to give up on. And one is assuring faculty control over curriculum, and that is being regularly violated by the transitional structures of the Students First plan, which are not in accord with existing governance structures within the community colleges, and which do not respect the viewpoint of the faculty who have been members of them up to a certain time ago, but have now withdrawn precisely for that reason. And I said, for a second example was the plan to eliminate department chairs and to have the various disciplinary groups reporting to associate deans and then deans. But that was unacceptable from the point of view of faculty control over curriculum. The other baseline item is to maintain the integrity of the community colleges. Faculty are opposed to the consolidation plan, which is not only harmful to loyalty that faculty, students, alumni, and for that matter, residents in the surrounding regions have towards these community colleges, but is not even needed because they have made significant changes within that existing structure. And so I said, we need to have a proper discussion of what is going on, and moreover, to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of students first, to review and revise it, and that it's not acceptable to continue with the plan as if it has not got significant problems. The other point which I made was that, for example, things which actually had started to work well, such as the transfer articulations, have been left to a side, as all the focus of the system office and the Board of Regents has been on students first. And I also mentioned the positive example of the presentation which faculty from criminal justice programs had made at the last board meeting, where they had made significant progress in terms of aligning the different programs, but that was done by faculty. It was not done by interference from the system office. And I said there is a real problem with the relationship between faculty and staff, senior staff at the system office. And I concluded that's what we have now is a situation of over-centralization. I went back on the $69 million, which is now in the system office and offices budget and controlled by them through shared services. And a term which I happen to like and which I recommend for use by others, delocalization. I think I made that up, but it explains exactly what is happening here in terms of removing local faculty control over their curriculum and eliminating the community colleges as they exist today. And so that was basically my point. And there was I'd say about a 50-minute discussion on this, which I judged actually positive because it allowed at least me to clearly express, I hope to your satisfaction, what is going on, and for them to hear it. And I did have discussions with at least 2 members of the board subsequently who wanted to know more. So I think that, let me stop there and say that I thought that some progress, minimal as it may be, was made in terms of airing the issues, let me put it that way.
And I'll say that so, was someone else speaking? Okay. Jump in if you are, but I was there also. I was really impressed. That was the first healthy discussion of that sort that I really heard at one of these board meetings, and that invitation to, I mean, I thought it was, there's a cynical interpretation, right? I think the board is aware that there's more than one bill concerning, before the legislature that has to do with perceived inadequacies in their performance, talking about training of the board of members and adjusting their membership. But I think there's also an interpretation that really, it was a bit of preparation, right? It was, anticipate your objections and then respond to them. And it was a good conversation. There was a comment made by David Jimenez that I thought was really interesting, right? He said, the fact is you can save $100, but if you burn down the company doing it, is it worth it? And there wasn't enough said to address that, but to be fair, I don't think the CFO has the ability to actually address that question. And You know, in fact, I wish I could. David has the screenshots of those. I know I have screenshots of their presentation, but I think it's worth looking at what the financial projections are based on, because there are these bar graphs, and there are these portions of the bar graphs that represent our increased enrollment and retention. And part of it is due to a belief that guided pathways alone would increase our retention so significantly. And the other part of it has to do with PACT. And both of those things, like, they need to be in conversation with faculty to have a real understanding of how effective they can actually expect this to be. And I don't think those numbers are rooted in anything. And NECHI has said so and asked them for more information. I expected that they would have found that information and presented it at this finance committee meeting, because NECHI has asked for it by June, but it wasn't present there. So there's a big gap there, and that's not something that a CFO can necessarily speak to, but they haven't provided the information anywhere else either. So found that interesting, and I hope they have that conversation at some point.
Yeah, to add to what Kalina just mentioned, it was largely a promissory note, right? Because the figures for 2018, 2019, 2020 were rather small savings, and largely the difference between the salary they paid to presidents of the community colleges and the decreased salary they now pay to CEOs. But then when you look at projections, well, projections zoom up, but what is that based upon? And can you determine policy on, let's call it, hopeful projections? I would say ones which are, I agree with Kalina on this, not fully substantiated.
Yeah, I call that magical thinking.
I'd like to say one thing about this report so far, which is you all are doing a fabulous job. Spending all this time, you know, explaining to them again and again and again and again, you know. You're trying so hard and doing so well.
Are you able to find the PDF?
Kalina, you're muted.
Sorry, here I am chatting away. So, okay, can you see my screen though?
Yes.
Okay, so the gray portion, did you hear that part? The gray portion, these bars, represents the students that we will hold on to due to guided pathways advising alone, and the yellow portion is the students that we'll hold on to due to PACT. I don't think they have any understanding of some of the unintended consequences of incentivizing students to go full-time when they can't go full-time, and that sometimes that will actually bar our students from going further or ever coming back. And I don't think, and which is not to say, right, we can fix that, but we're not even addressing it. And the guided pathways advising alone, an interesting outcome of a math meeting on ACME yesterday was this. So guided pathways advising is effective when there's curriculum to match. Not only do we not have curriculum, we are not developing the introductory math modifications or whatever, the reforms that we're doing, where they're not using guided pathways models to develop them. And when asked why, the answer was there's not enough time. The cost of this is more than the amount that all of this was supposed to save in the first place. So I'm really concerned. And I don't think that conversation is really happening. I'm saying it, but I don't think the conversation is happening. But there was a nice start at that finance and infrastructure meeting for one. So.
This is Mike Shea. I think that was Barbara who spoke before, and I wanted to agree that thank you for all this work that you two in particular have been doing. I just wish all of this is an attempt to save money, and I just wish the board would understand that they need to advocate for education. Just can't be done cheaply and done well. It's training can, you can have 100 people in a room and show them a video, but the education can't. And that's just where we're hurt because the board members just don't understand well how education works. So, but I am really glad to hear the, smaller victories that are happening. I think it's a sign that maybe, they'll start realizing that it's just not about, you can't do the students well just by saving money. It just cheapens their education. So anyway, but thanks for your work.
Thanks. Okay, that's it for finance and infrastructure, right, David?
Yes.
Okay. I'll talk about ASA. So ASA was just this morning. I'm still processing it a little bit. The two, I think, most sort of system-wide interest would be that there is a John Lewis Institute for Social Justice opening at Central, which is, it seems fairly interesting. I can't give you a great update at the moment. And then there is we had a presentation from the Dana Institute and NCII that is meant to sort of function as professional development for board members in preparation for the presentation of the actual ACME board policy at next month's meeting. So these two, representatives from these two consulting firms came to present national trends, etc. There are a lot of questions, I would say, because there wasn't enough time. We were rushing through the agenda because one of our board members had to have had an interview at a certain time. So we were rushing. I asked some questions. Among those questions was, we saw a map, because one of the most contentious things is that we're moving towards a co-requisite only model, no developmental standalone courses at all. How many, when we were shown a map of all the states that use this co-requisite model, how many of those states use a co-requisite only model? Because a lot of the things that folks are saying, and Jen is here, but I don't think she can really be with us. Mary Beth is here though, right? You're in with us, Mary Beth?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
They can speak to this much better. Do you want to just jump in? I don't know if you were listening to the meeting.
Yes, I did listen to that part of the meeting. And what I'll say is, and I texted Kalina this during the meeting, that I don't disagree with some of what they're saying, and with the data they present is fairly convincing. I think the problem is the implementation, how Connecticut has formed this ACME document. The implementation of the information they presented is not always connected, and it's not exactly clear, in this ACME document, how they're going to do all the things that they supposedly want to do to kind of mirror this national trend. So, I would have a hard time refuting the data, because they have data from thousands, hundreds of thousands of students. But our ACME document, when I look at it, doesn't feel like it really addresses all of the information that they presented this morning. So that's kind of where I feel the disconnect. And I don't know if you agree with me, Kalina, but.
I do. And I was, kind of trying to draw that out, right? So he was talking about how widespread this co-requisite model is. Technically, we're part of it because we offer ALP. So the question is not so much how widespread is the co-requisite model, but how widespread is the use of only the co-requisite. And I don't know that question didn't really have an answer. And I've been told that the models that were presented to us, none of them actually proposed or actually did what we are proposing. You know, and there's also the use of GPA. So basically, it was marketing. It was definitely marketing, and I'm going to say I don't get emotional that often, but there was a moment where one of these presenters just said, in response to my ask about, you know, why this is necessary, she just, you know, said anything's better than what you're doing now, which I think was just so, I don't think she even realized the level of disrespect that was, because she's so caught up in the marketing of this reform. And I understand that she's passionate about it, but I think that comment alone represented the lack of meaningful back and forth, right? You're talking to professionals who have designed things that they think might be working or are willing to work. You can't say anything's better. So that really got me. And I think as long as, if that's the level of give and take that's going on, I'm concerned. I did not find that particularly respectful to people who do the work every day. I see a hand, Ron.
Sorry, I turned my video off because I was having trouble with connections. So, so I hope that it improves. But I had seen research that suggests that the improvement that they're talking about with this developmental model only comes at the expense of outcomes. So of learning outcomes. In other words, students perform better with this model because their expectations of what they need to learn in the course is reduced. And so that's my biggest concern, is that especially in math, that they are going to they're going to improve students' current performance at the expense of their futures.
And that's of course my worry, right? But do we have things like that documented, Ron, in terms of the number of like how outcomes were reduced and things like that? Because that is my concern, right? All of this is sort of motivated by these equity goals, but my concern is that we're actually going to be withholding essential education from folks, crippling them for the future, and calling it a move towards equity. Of course, I know nothing about this. So if you have documentation of that sort of thing, please, I guess, send.
Kalina, can I just?
Yes, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I am not at all surprised that someone said to you that anything is better. We've all both heard and experienced anecdotes of what happened to me, as I've said, being called a liar twice when I was a faculty member serving on a BOR committee. And that level of contempt and arrogance is not at all surprising, that they think anything can be better. And quite frankly, I would have probably been a lot worse than you, because I just find that completely insulting, that whatever we were doing before, they can do better. So from a different perspective, we are doing nothing right, or we're doing nothing right until they came along. So thank you for sharing that, but it just makes my blood boil.
Sure. Yeah, and Jen gave such a wonderful presentation yesterday of the excellent work that has been done in this system to keep up with the restrictions of PA 1240, et cetera. So to dismiss it that way was unfortunate. So I guess that the end result is we could talk about this forever. I think we should talk about it again when we see the final policy. Haven't seen it yet. It's my understanding that it won't be significantly revised. There's still a lot of concerns. And I have way more questions than I got actual answers to from this morning. and some of the answers just kind of ignored. I think you mentioned also Mary Beth, right? So one of the examples I was given was of Florida. Florida had to get this together in a single year, and they did it, and their success rates were excellent because the number of people who took college level math and English in their first year shot up. Guess what? What was their reform? The policy was that everyone takes college level English and math in their first year. So the very fact that that was presented as evidence of success is mind-boggling, but okay. Sorry, David, your hand is up. I have problems with logical mistakes. Sorry.
I was just going to say, you know, I follow the discussion, but I don't have firsthand experience with teaching math or English at the community college level. But I find it surprising that the system office doesn't look into the experience we have at the university level. Because I know, and maybe Mike Shea and others can speak, David Stoloff can speak for their universities, but we do have these remedial math and English courses. At Central, we call them 099. There was a reform about 12 years ago, I would say, where 099 was merged with a 101 course, and they created a special textbook based on their experience with students who basically didn't have high school, the equivalent of high school leaving math, which was the problem. And it would be interesting to know what the statistics are from the universities. I mean, we are part of the same system. And this is kind of typical that they're looking for the experience in Florida and elsewhere, usually based on consultants' glossy pamphlet reports, which I distinguish from scholarly articles in peer-reviewed journals. But nonetheless, they have some relevance. But what about what's going on at the universities? Shouldn't they be looking at that as well? There may be some lessons one way or the other. I couldn't tell you in advance, but certainly we've had multiple years of experience dealing with students arriving unprepared for university level math and composition.
And yeah, I don't know, but today was professional development from outside consultants and national trends. So hopefully we'll talk about it more next time, and hopefully our meeting schedule aligns so that we can have meaningful discussion before it's set in stone. I'm not sure that there's much we can do now, though. We can just, I guess, comment. So you lead right into, David, in your mention of glossy pamphlets. I think the day of our last meeting, we received a pamphlet about Students First. And I think David had mentioned that we would respond to it or look at it, or I didn't find anything particularly worth reading or responding to in it. I'm not sure if anyone else did. The only information that we did receive that I find kind of interesting about it was that it cost the system, grant funded, of course, $22,000. Okay, let's move on to legislative hearings. We had the March 4th legislative hearing, and the interesting bills there, or the ones that were of like specific interest to our system, were HB 6404, which had to do with PACT, funding PACT, not expanding it, but just funding it as it is, which is first time, full-time community college. HB 6402, which was the study bill that we agreed on some substitute language for. And you have links in the agenda to, the written testimony, the video testimony. Quite a few people, testified for these bills. It was a pretty decent showing of system folks. And then there was March 9th. The ones of specific interest to us would be SB 824, which talks about training for the members of the BOR. There's SB 997, which I almost missed, but David caught. It was an expansion of the Board of Trustees for UConn, and on voting rights of faculty members on the BOR. Then there was 5545, which is about specifically allocating a budget for the system office so that it currently funds itself by simply taking portions of the community college and CSU budgets, right? And we've seen that their budget has grown to a number that is actually larger than the budget of any community college. It's kind of getting out of hand. So this would kind of limit that by giving them an actual budget that they would have to stay within, as opposed to taking from CCs and CSUs. 6375 has to do with the unfunded pension liability portion. So this concerns higher ed. We cover unfunded pension liability that extends way into the past, right? So that to some extent, our students' tuition partially pays for fringe benefits of faculty and staff long gone. So all the other state agencies have a way that that's paid for directly through the state. We do not. And for the past 2 years, the community colleges at least had it directly taken care of by the state. They gave us $20 million to cover it, but it wasn't renewed this year. So all of higher ed is dealing with this issue of how to cover this and whether the state will cover it. And then 6403, legislative approvals for mergers or closings. Quite a few people, I think, testified on that also. And then 6582, unemployment benefits for adjunct faculty. Full disclosure, it's a little embarrassing, but I think I testified on 6 bills that day. So yeah. And yeah, so any discussion just about that stuff, all the crazy legislation that affects our system at the moment?
What was discussed regarding fringe benefits for part-time faculty? Like what was?
I mean, in terms of solutions, I think at the moment, I mean, it's really just appealing to the state. There was also, oh, I didn't mention it here, but there was an appropriations hearing on March 4th also, where lots of folks talked about that issue and about PACT. So, I mean, it's really just appealing to the state to find a way to cover it. And the way that it has been covered, at least for the community colleges so far, has been to just like allocate a certain amount in each budget, but you have to wait for that to be renewed. Ben Barnes thinks the only sort of sustainable way that we don't have to wait every 2 years to get money to cover this is to just shift our payroll directly to the state, but that has its own risks, right? Yeah. So all of higher ed still just waiting to get it funded, really. And the CCs usually have, and the CSUs have not. Cool.
It's necessary, needed.
Okay. All right, so no other discussion.
Lena, I have a question.
Sure.
Do we know if any of the stimulus package will cover some of the deficiencies that we're experiencing? I mean, with the efficiencies that you mentioned, did anyone comment on expectations so that there may be some coverage?
So yes, there was good. Oh yeah, good. I hope you have that because I don't feel adequate to answer that well.
I don't have the figures in front of me, but it was discussed at the Finance Committee. This will be, as it were, the third round of CARES or the equivalent, right? CARES 1 was about $54 million, split evenly between the institutions and students, largely for refunds of their residence fees and tuition for when we went online in the spring. The second one was $108 million, and I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but I think it was still split on a 50-50 basis. I'll check that and get back to you. There's a third one coming up, and of course, that's a huge one, right? The number of that bill, which the president just signed, the real president actually, just signed, is $1.9 trillion, and there's lots of money in there for states and localities, for schools and I believe also higher education. So some of the concern about fiscal viability and so forth may be remediated to some extent in this third package. And what I'll do is I'll get back to us. I'll double check the numbers and get back to you with an email as soon as I have further information, and I'll inquire about that. But we're talking about a third round, the benefits of which we haven't yet experienced.
And there's definitely a portion of it that has to go to students and has to be need-based, right? And I think one of the things that Ben Barnes emphasized was that it's great, but not sufficient because we need ongoing funding to cover the decrease in enrollment. So, yeah. Okay. So right on time, Jen. We're about to talk. I think the next thing is, David is not with us. He might want to mention one more thing in the reports of the chair and vice chair. But since you're here, let's talk about the Higher Ed Consolidation Committee's informational forum yesterday. It wasn't a hearing, it was an informational forum, right? There were 3 panels, one chosen by the system office, one that was NECHI, and the third chosen by faculty, which got to be us. Jen and I both presented for faculty. It was 3 hours long, 1 hour for each set of folks. So system office actually presented for the full hour, so they kind of took half an hour's of NECHI's time to do question and answer. Jen, do you want to just?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was super scared. I did my best. And I think the most heartwarming thing of it all was that I reached out to about 30 colleagues. Last minute, I found out on Friday I was doing this, and over the weekend I did multiple drafts, and my English colleagues across the state really stepped up, and I mean, within hours of me contacting them, sent me multiple track changes in Word of things I could do. So I feel like that was a huge win for me personally, because I felt such collegiality in the process, and I've learned a lot. And I was thankful for the experience. I think that the end document that I came up with was clear and concise. It's referenced that there are a lot of wins in PA 1240, and we should keep developmental, and we should keep what we have in PA 1240 and properly fund it. And then I talked about the co-requisite model and how the managers didn't really take our advice. They just sort of kept the same draft that we thought they would keep. And I emphasized that the vast majority of faculty and staff are against consolidation, because that was something that came up. The legislators challenged the BOR early on to state that if a lot of faculty are upset and you're downplaying the issue. So then I, at the last minute, typed in a paragraph emphasizing that, again, the vast majority of faculty and staff are against consolidation. And I fielded, I think, 2 questions, okay, and it's all there for you guys to watch if you'd like. But I think what stood out to me the most was when Jane Gates got shut down, because in her presentation, she talked about how this was a done deal. And then somebody said to her, actually, that's our decision, not yours. And I kind of enjoyed watching that happen. But then towards the end, another person stated, I'm sorry, I don't remember their names, I was so nervous, but somebody stated to us, I think this is moving forward anyway, but what can we do to help support you and help you find a voice in this? So that was, I couldn't tell if they were just trying to be balanced or if that's really the feeling. But I think overall that we represented the faculty and staff really well. We all had a kind of different voice coming forward. And I also emphasized lastly that today, I will be leaving the meeting for a while. I'll pop in when I can, but at 2 o'clock, CSET's meant to be voting on whether or not at each campus faculty will participate in the English initiatives. And at 3 Rivers, I did my part. We unanimously voted not to participate. I think that's going to be the case at many colleges. And I'm hoping, so I'll keep you guys posted on that, because that will be another huge win for us to be able to say, we voted unanimously representing faculty from the whole state that we're not participating. But we do have a couple, I've heard already of a couple campuses where people are still saying, I want a seat at the table. And I think it's the failure of their CSET rep to really explain what's at stake to the faculty. So I was super disheartened to hear that. And I just hope that enough colleges are going to not participate moving forward. So that on the English side, which is a significant, portion of guided pathways, that will basically say, we don't believe in the elimination of developmental. And we do believe that what we have in place in PA 1240, if properly funded, is excellent and the end, right? So so that's all I sort of have. I don't know if I don't want to recap everybody's, but I'll take questions if you have them. Fran, did you have a question?
Not a question. I need to praise you, first of all. Kalena and Estella was wonderful, and Waynette also. I mean, just a comment quickly. The thing that has really struck me in watching that forum yesterday, and also in watching and participating in testimony this week and the past week, is the members, at least of the higher ed committee, the vast majority, they trust us. They trust us and they respect us as professionals. I mean, it was really striking to me. They actually trust us far more than they trust the people in the system office. That's clear. And that's good. So we have allies there, and it's made a difference. So for those who just want to give up for days like that, we shouldn't. I think we are making some progress here. And again, a lot of it is due to the Jens and the Kalenas and others. So great job.
Thank you so much, Fran. I think Ron had a question next.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Fran and say that you guys did a phenomenal, fantastic job. Yesterday, that was one of the happiest days professionally that I've had in a long time.
Aww.
So thank you so much. I also want to let you know that the English department at Naugatuck Valley Community College voted not to participate as well.
Awesome.
So Three Rivers is in good company.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you so much. Hi, Lois. Go ahead.
Hey, Jen. I also, number one, I want to say Norwalk English department has also voted not to participate. Hopefully Forest Selvey, who's not in the English department, but is a CSET rep, will follow through on that. You all did a fabulous job yesterday. You really did. By the end of I was so impressed, and I was so impressed when they started slapping, use the pun for Derek slap, but slapping around the BOR people. And I love when Vale asked that question, because no matter how they answered it, it wouldn't have mattered. But when he asked the question about did any of you teach or did go in the classroom or whatever, and I'm going, oh God, they're all going to say yeah, they used to teach and so forth. But the way he responded to it, it wouldn't have mattered if they said yes or no, because when they said yes, he came back and said, well, then why don't you understand what the faculty are complaining about? So it was a great day yesterday, and you guys did a fabulous job.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, and thank you, Kalena, for the opportunity.
And can I say, just as a person who was waiting to speak in that third panel, right? I want to say how impressed I was with apparently what all of us have been doing as faculty, as staff, just as the entire system, because we didn't have to say anything almost, right? At the end of that first panel, you realize the legislators already knew what was going on, had a position on it, were informed, were speaking to the issues in a way that they understood what was happening. So I was impressed with us as a group, really, because it sure took the pressure off to some degree, right, Jen? In the sense that it's like, okay, I don't have to over-explain. They get it. The other thing I want to say is, like, part of the reason they get it is because they're the product of our system. Like, Vale was really passionate, and he talked about his experience in our system and his connection with faculty. And like, that's what's so cool about our system, that it's all levels of society and all levels of power come through our system. And that is like what makes it so special. It's why we're here. So I agree with you, Ron. I was exhausted after this week, but I think we kind of saw the products of our work on many levels, and that was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also I couldn't help at the end be mildly flippant to point out, if you guys watched through the end, that the idea was, here are faculty and staff presenting, and they argued in the beginning that they needed to do a better job listening, and I noted that almost all of the initial presenters left when we went to talk, and I just had to say that because
That
it
was brilliant.
shocking
That was
to
a
me.
brilliant
Yes.
observation.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I also want to really thank Kalina for mentoring me through the process. And Kalina, your ability to synthesize ideas on the fly and present them was just so amazing to witness. You did such a wonderful job. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And thank you for your presentation also. I mean, I really do think I felt wonderful to be there with Estela Lopez, who has such a sort of grasp of the sort of the data, the administrative side. I was always honored to speak with you, Jen, because you have such a knowledge and passion for your students, and you express it so well. And Waynette really sort of expressed what I think we don't talk about enough, which is the ways that staff have had to keep up with the constant changes and compensate for the disorganization that's happening as everything shifts. So I was happy that happened, and it was very informative. I did not expect that reaction in the first panel. It was striking. So yes, good to know. All right, anything else about March 11th? Yesterday?
I just have I have the figures now on the HERF, which is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, part of CARES. Do you want to have the figures? I'll just mention them quickly. They're in Ben Barnes' report. And I didn't have the page in front of me. But the first one was a total of $54 million, split evenly between students and the institutions, so 27 million each. In HERF 2, which is the second one in CARES Package 2, it's $108 million for the institutions of public higher education in Connecticut, part of CSUS. So this is exclusive of UConn. And that is split between student assistance of 27 million and institutional aid of 80 million. So it isn't 50-50. For example, the community colleges will get $29.6 million. The universities will get 29.6 and the community colleges will get 51.3. And I note there's no money explicitly mentioned for the system office. So I will make that available in the minutes. Those are 2 pages from the finance report that Ben Barnes prepared.
Thank you. Thank you. And we are looping back just a little bit, right? But as long as we're back to finishing up our report, because do we get to hold on to you, Jen? I forget. Are you leaving again for CSET?
So CSET starts at 2. I can be like 5 minutes late, so I can hang on another 10 minutes. And then if you text me, if you need anything, I can pop back in where there's a lull in that meeting. But I have to vote on behalf of Three Rivers, and I have to say some frustrated comments about my frustration about the departments that voted to participate. Fran, I'm just looking at you, your campus, not you, but Tunxis voted to participate. Did you know this?
No.
I'm so
No.
sad. Basically what happened, I'll just tell you guys the backstory real quick. What happened was Susan Gentry's on sabbatical. She didn't go to the meeting, but there are enough people on the Tunxis English department who were like, well, if we don't have a seat at the table, and Jen Wicke was calling the vote, and I don't think she's as outspoken as Susan, and sadly, we lost Tunxis, but I'll keep you posted on the rest of the vote.
Yeah, let me know. I'll do what I can do.
Okay. Well,
I don't want to say too much here because it'll be
Yeah.
on public record.
Yeah, but
And was your
Sad.
hand up already, Fran? Was there something
I'm
else?
sorry. Let me put that down.
All right. So great. I'm glad we got you for at least a portion on on yesterday. So as we're looping back, I do want to mention one thing. Okay, go ahead, Ron.
I just wanted to follow up on what Fran said about not speaking on public record. I had a junior faculty member contact me after the hearing on Tuesday, and said that one of the legislators asked about retaliation and fear. And she said she wanted to make sure that we let everyone know that faculty are afraid to speak out against this consolidation, and that she's very much opposed and was incredibly fearful. And it's not fearful for their jobs. They're fearful for promotion. They're fearful for their careers. They're fearful about tenure. And so that's where the fear lies that I've been told by my faculty, particularly the junior faculty, is they're afraid that if they speak out against consolidation, they will lose opportunity for promotion and tenure. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I probably should have mentioned that. So there was Representative Vail is very concerned about this, and he's asked me very directly once. And I wanted to be very careful about how I answered, right? And so I limited my response to simply saying, please realize that when you're being sort of passionately pursued by faculty, they're not going to advance themselves by doing that, right? Like when you're speaking at a hearing, that's not a clear path to one of the new fancy jobs at system office, right? Like limited my response to that. And since I responded in that way, I have had folks reach out to me to say that they do feel threatened and they'd like that communicated, and that even that the folks who felt threatened weren't necessarily the ones who were contacting me, because if they only have my my school email address, they don't even want to put that in a school email. So that's something. Go ahead, Lois.
I just want to give people some of the backstory on this, that this is been a recurring theme for any kind of public testimony we've done. The original hearing they had 2 years ago in March, this was brought up as well. Were people afraid of speaking out? And we gave examples. So this is something that the Higher Ed Committee has been aware of, and that's why they continue to ask that question, because it's been said to them now for a couple of years. They know about this.
Right. So one more thing in this little double back to our reports, David and I should mention a conversation that we had about TAP again.
Yeah, you know, we spoke with Steve Marcellinus in particular, and as you know, he's come before us twice, I think, with a request to participate in the Transfer Articulation Council. And I can share with you some numbers, because I did ask Jane Gates for the numbers of community college students who have gone on to the CSU universities, and I also have the figures for Charter Oak and UConn. These figures, however, don't indicate whether the student was part of a pathway. So it simply indicates the number of students. And that's, Steve Marcellinus brought up a good point, which is we really need greater detail on these numbers, right? And more background on who are the students, did they change their major halfway through, or their concentration, did they follow a pathway, etc. Right? But I'll mention the numbers to you, which are surprisingly, I don't know, to me it seems surprisingly small. There's a total of 243 students in the 2018 to 2019 period who went on that they have statistics for to a four-year university. And that would include UConn, Charter Oak State College, or one of the four CSUs. And in 2019 to 2020, part of which, of course, takes into account the pandemic period, that number was only 5 higher, 248. I think if we look at just a one particular university, my university, there were 81 in the 18 to 19 period and 80 in the 19 to 20 period. So actually a reduction of 1. And the point which we discussed with him was that, you know, this has to be updated, and the transfer articulations which precede students first and are independent of it was done by faculty. I know, for example, at Central, Candace Barrington was associated with that work on that for 2 years. and Beth Bernstein continued. These plans have not been updated. Some disciplines are not included. For example, philosophy never was included. And all of this has been put on the back burner as the system office, and for that matter, the board, have focused only on students first. And it seems to me, I'll give my personal opinion here, that this is something we should take the initiative to relaunch internal to the FAC with, I think, and we asked him whether he would be willing to participate, Steve Marcellinus, as an invited guest or expert, and he indicated yes. And so that's something I'd like to see. I'd like to see that we can show that faculty can take up one of the positive achievements of the merger of the community colleges and universities. I think overall it's been negative, but this was one of the positive achievements. But it's been left on the back burner. It's been sidelined because of students first. And we have, we discussed, for example, learning objectives, of which I'm no expert, but Ron certainly is an expert on that. And Steve Marcellinus wants to sit down and look at that. I think, here's my suggestion, I think we should create a working group of the FAC with a specific task to get the statistics in order with such background information as we can find. Therefore, a very delimited objective, but and do that with the assistance of Steve Marcellinus. We can ask for whatever figures we want from the system office, and they are required to provide it to us because it is part of our mandate to assist the Board of Regents in the accomplishments of its tasks. The transfer articulation is one of those tasks. I mentioned, when we were discussing the excellent presentation that was made by the criminal justice people to the board meeting, the last meeting, and that was done by faculty, right? And I think we can relaunch in a limited way without participating in the system office structure, either transfer articulation council. I'm not particularly interested in that. But if we could create a working group of a few of us from community college and university, get the data that we need, work with Steve Marcellinus, and come up with a report in the month or two to come, I think that would be very positive and would show that we can do something that the system office has been unwilling or unable to do. So I don't know what people think about that. And as I say, I give it as my personal opinion, but it's something that I think we should do. Ron, I don't know what your views on this would be.
And Lois has a hand up.
Yeah, I think Lois was first, but I'll speak after Lois.
I have somewhat of a concern about that at Norwalk because we as faculty spend a fair amount of time talking students who have put themselves into TAP programs, taking them out of a number of TAP programs. So I don't know how I would justify all of this.
Go ahead, Ron.
So here's my, I mean, in principle, David, in principle, I agree with you. Obviously, transfer and articulation is incredibly important, not to mention that it strengthens the bonds between community college and state university faculty, which I really wholeheartedly believe in. The only problem is that because TAP has been used as the model for the entire consolidation, it has sort of poisoned the identity of TAP in a way that means that if we do work on this, the PR will be that we support consolidation, that we support this process as a legitimate process for not only approving the TAP, programs, but approving all of the programs. And I can tell you, yes, Mike, Emmanuel, you guys worked very, very hard on that criminology and studies and criminal justice program. However, the English faculty looked at it, and we have all kinds of problems with it. And I think the fact that, and this is the whole problem with their structure for the reorganization, is that they have faculty working in silos. And that curriculum should have never seen the light of day without input from everyone who has a gen ed course in there. I mean, criminal justice report writing based on the outcomes that you guys have is not a writing course. Faculty overwhelmingly rejected the college success course, and yet that's in there. So, I mean, again, I don't want to diminish your work, Mike, because you guys worked really, really hard. And, you did the best you could within a silo, but curriculum can't be designed in a silo. And the English faculty at Naugatuck Valley is really, really upset with not just the criminal justice program, but with the music studies program and all these different programs that basically have diminished the writing curriculum for students, which we think is essential. So, but that's sort of a sidebar. The biggest thing is that if we get involved in TAP, I fear that the system office will then say, look, Netchi, look, BOR, the faculty do believe in this whole stuff, all this stuff.
Anyone else?
Can I comment?
Miranda, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Having worked with the TAP program for the existence of my office, I have to agree with you, Ron, wholeheartedly, because prior to the TAP program, at least I can speak to my experience with Central, we had different types of articulation that individually our institutions were working closely with the faculty and the community colleges to make the programs better aligned and transition. This is prior to TAP. But I do have to say that, and echo what you just said, in sitting in meetings for the TAP, because prior to Beth and any of the other representatives from Central that were part of the TAP team, I was the representative. And my understanding is that since then, they've used this as a model to move forward. This is the model that they have taken to conferences to substantiate that this model that they're proposing works. Just to let you know, there have been presentations, there have been teams that have gone out to national conferences to talk about this particular initiative. So yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that if we do proceed, and I work very closely with Steve Marcellinus, and I know all the intention as well, but one of the other things that we would be doing is justifying all these new positions that they have at the central office, board office, to replicate some of the work the great work that's already done on the local and on our campuses. So if you look at the initial report relative to what's happening at the board office with regard to positions, it's not only taking away the faculty autonomy, but it's also taking away from the faculty administrative offices that support a lot of the faculty work. So that's just my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with David. I think I understand what Ron and Mara are saying, but unfortunately, that's because they're lying. I mean, they're not following the model that TAP did, because the TAP really did have faculty involved in all levels. There was a problem with the vote at the end, but problem is they're misrepresenting TAP. They're misrepresenting what they're currently doing. As if it was the TAP involvement, which it wasn't. It's just not the same, because TAP really did come out of departments and schools at all 17 institutions that worked together to come up with that. It's clumsy and big, but it does let people transfer somewhat, and it was because it was faculty were involved from the bottom up. and they didn't involve faculty from the bottom up on this go round.
But that's not what's being advertised. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but that's not what's being, in the eyes of the public or anyone that has anything to do with moving their agenda forward, because it is a lie, most people are listening to what's being said, and that's the lie. So how do we counter that lie is the question. Do we begin to talk about how we're, how the faculty has been the forefront of the TAP program? I mean, to counter the lie, you have to counter the lie. Otherwise, the lie will be believed.
Yeah. If I may interrupt, I think that's my
That was my
proposal.
point. I was just saying, I think we'd have to make that case that, I mean, again, I did call it a lie. That may be too strong a word, but certainly they're misrepresenting it. It might be based on ignorance. It might be based on deliberate, I don't know, but it's not the same. And I think you're right. We would have to say that. And I'm not sure there's so many people in the public who are hearing one or the other. It's a pretty, what's the word? A pretty precious point. And I think that it would be easy to sort of explain what really happened. But because I just think it's right, David's point, the biggest point being right, is that it's good to show that faculty can do this. I think that's what's important, is to show that faculty can, has, and will do this if we have the opportunity to do so. So thanks.
So I want to say that I definitely want to really think about this a lot more. To me, the most important, the most shocking part, right, is that we combined 17 institutions and said that there was this great benefit, and TAP was supposed to be one of them. It's one of the things that we advertise as success. And here's where we are. It exists. That's really all we know. We don't know how successful it is. We don't know how different colleges are doing. We don't know anything about TAP other than we're hoping, right, that it's doing okay. And that is strange to me. And I think it speaks to the fact that, and I think this kind of echoes the conversation that you, Ron, and Mike are having, right? And Mike Emanuel, in the sense that there's all of this work done by individual folks, faculty, whatever, towards this goal, and the institutional support or structure is not there, right? Because we have to be collecting this data somehow. There should have been a plan to collect it. It's not there. I was so shocked by that. I wanted to answer the question of either what is the data, or why don't we have it, or right? Like, to me, that's a great mystery. And I would like to think about that more, but clearly it's a minefield in terms of people are so stung by having their work exploited and misrepresented. So maybe we can talk about this more between meetings and revisit it next meeting, because I think we're all clear that if you listen to even legislators talking to us about, like, okay, so you say it's a big mess, but then what? And there's a lot that we can do really productively. One of those things I think is following through on TAP. It just hasn't been followed. It hasn't been done, and we're in a bind. So I have no position. I'm totally confused. I feel this way on so many issues in the system right now, where it's like you just cannot figure out the right way to go and the most productive thing to do. So I'm hearing. Is anyone feeling particularly clear on this issue at the
I
moment?
think your instincts are right. We don't have a consensus on this. So why don't we bring it back next month?
Well, I also think that, Mike Shea is absolutely correct that that they are lying about the fact that they're using the TAP process. In fact, I was just, in the middle of our meeting, I got an email from someone on our Gen Ed committee saying that we shouldn't be following the TAP model for providing feedback on these consolidated programs, because that's not what they want us to do. And I said, well, that's what they told the BOR and NECHI that they wanted us to do. So, right. So that's not true. I mean, obviously, so Mike's right. Okay. The problem is that they are constructing these programs, CJ, not just CJ, Mike, to respond to you, not just CJ. I'm talking about all these programs. They're constructing them without the detail. And they did the same thing with TAP, without the detail necessary to govern the programs. Like I said, there's no program coordinators. There's no structure in place to monitor these programs. They're programs on paper only. They're not programs in operation. And that's true with what they're proposing now. That's true of the CJ courses. That's true of the music studies. That's true of the biochemistry. It's all, and they basically, on 2 pages of paper, they wrote down what they wanted to do. And there's no information on advisory boards. There's no information on program review processes. There's no information on resources needed for these programs to continue at all 12 institutions. Yesterday, I think it was Rook promised that students would be able to take these programs at all 12 institutions. We don't have the resources for that. How can you make those promises? And so that's why TAP is in trouble, and that's why these programs will be in trouble, because they have, despite the fact that, Mike, you're absolutely right in terms of the process for approving these programs, they're not following the TAP model, even though they say they are. In essence, they are following the TAP model because they put so little work into putting in the infrastructure to make the TAP model survive, just like they're doing with these consolidated programs. They're not putting the infrastructure in place to make sure these programs can operate.
Okay, so let's put this on the agenda for next month. I mean, even if it's just a conversation, I mean, because just this conversation alone kind of identifies certain issues we might want to address with the system, right? So even if that's what comes out of it, good enough. Okay, so that's on the agenda for next. Yes?
I'm sorry, this is Paul. Can I just add something real quick? At least the faculty are working on something. We had an issue, make a long story short, that came up before the Senate back in October. And just as an aside, several people from FAC came to our last Senate meeting. So I appreciate that. Colina and Fran and so many others that came. I'm sorry if I'm not calling you out right now. But anyway, thank you all for coming. But we had an issue in the fall semester where it came up through the normal governance structure of department to CAP, and then it came to the Senate where a new health care program, health science program, an associate's degree, and it was marketed that students would get out and get a job in healthcare clinical, and so that was, we had fights about that. But my point is that our dean wanted this done to begin the program in the fall semester. So she sent it to the BOR, which approved the program, had never gone through anything internally. So I and others were very upset about this, made sure that we put it in the minutes for our Nietzsche report. But so, you know, the fact that this is happening, that somebody's working on things, that's good. I mean, I appreciate the fact that they allow faculty, because now at our institution, this program went through management, went through the BOR, was all approved, and now they're passing it through the governance structure for approval. But it's really a moot point. It's outrageous.
All right. Well, and we'll return to some of that with item 6. Let's move on to number 5. So this is about the relationship between community college management and governance. And can I pass that off to you, Fran? I think you requested it last meeting.
Yeah, this is really for the community college representatives. Let me just be blunt. Is your management interfering in the operation of your governance body? Because at Tunxus, that is happening.
At Norwalk, no,
Clearly.
not at Norwalk.
I would say the only way that's happening, Fran, is that our CEO and our administration has sort of become the messenger for policies that are coming from the system office that should have gone through our some of our shared governance bodies. For instance, anything related to academic standards should have gone through our academic standards committee. And yet those policies such as the student engagement policy, the pass-fail policy, those were imposed without any those were imposed without going through any of the shared governance body that should have had some oversight of those policies.
Go ahead, Lois.
I hear what you're saying, Ron, but those were not local decisions. They were mandates from system office to all the colleges. So the administration at the colleges really didn't have any say in that.
Well, except for the fact that, Lois, we're independently accredited.
I understand that.
We're required, our CEOs are required to have a say in that.
I get it, Ron, but they don't have a say in it. They don't. So I don't want to blame them for that, for stuff that's coming down from system office.
No, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that you could look at this in multiple ways. You could,
Well,
you know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I don't want, I want to take, if they're interfering with our local, what's happening on a local level, yes, that's a problem. But at Norwalk, that's not happening.
Other
I'm not
people?
I'm not Gateway's governance leader, but and I do think there's a constant evolution of this relationship. But we get requests for things that I think kind of overreach sometimes, but it's always settled with a simple, we're not doing that, or this is why, and it's handled. And I think it's part of our CEO's role to make those requests, right? Part of his job description. And at the moment it's handled.
And I agree with Colleen. I think that's exactly where it stands at Optic Valley. Same thing. That it's requests are made that basically they'd have no choice but to make that request, and we, given our principles and our integrity, have no choice but to say no.
I would say at Capitol, I wouldn't say that they're a hindrance, other than this last issue that I just mentioned, where they completely went around governance to get this program approved. So that's pretty big. It violates standard 3 of Nietzsche. But I, for example, have our CEO and our dean as a standing agenda item on each of our Senate meetings for them to give updates and reports. And generally they've, been very professional and personable about that. And my dean, I've worked with her for years. We were chairs together. But so there's that. So, relatively we get along, and they wouldn't necessarily stand in the way. But like I said, that one issue. And, maybe I know I can be very blunt. I guess there's pros and cons to that, but I chaired the Senate many, many years, elected as a Senate leader. And so anytime we have our first Senate meeting, like I said, I always have a standing agenda item with the CEO and the president or deans or whatever they used to call them. And on the first day, I would always welcome management there. We have other deans who attend, but I also say, I want to be very clear that management has no authority here. In these walls, you have no authority. The Senate members are elected members. The way we run it at Capitol, we have elections every spring for Senate and other governance committees throughout the entire college, faculty and staff. Management does not vote. And so I say, once we go outside of this room, outside of these walls, you're my boss, and I defer to that and I respect that. But inside the walls of the Senate meeting, you have no authority. We appreciate your input, and speaking on agenda items and other topics, you're more than welcome to speak, but that's as far as it goes. And they've always accepted that.
Go ahead, Lois.
I just want to put a caveat on what I said. I will say that right now with our current interim CEO, we have no problem whatsoever, but we are coming to the end of a search for a permanent CEO, and depending upon who that is, we may have that problem.
I can report on Housatonic. I know people are often disappointed that Housatonic people are not more militant, and we have passed some things that were good resolutions and things, but our Senate leader is has been sort of deferential to both the local administration and certainly to the system administration. She's on one of their big committees now, and the meetings tend to get sort of confusing. There's a lot of confusion in those meetings, and luckily we have two really good people who are union reps, so that's a better situation. And I've asked some people, well, how come nobody runs, for head of the Senate? It's been a long time with the same leader, and they say, well, nobody wants to do it. So that's I'd say ours is not in very good shape, and they don't have to work very hard to dominate it because it just gets kind of confusing and won't take a clear stand on things very easily where you can understand what the issues are. So it's too bad, but that's where we stand right now.
So I don't see, and Mike has said that Northwestern's doing okay, right?
This is Mary Beth. At ACC, I'm not exactly sure how to respond to this question. So I'm not our faculty council chair. As far as our faculty council meetings go, our CEO doesn't attend. Our dean does and gives reports at every meeting. And in those meetings, there's no issues, right? So there's no problems during the meetings. I would say that there is an overall feeling on the campus that we are being asked to do things that we wouldn't be comfortable doing or don't believe that we should have to do, and that we have a very good understanding that those requests are not specifically coming from our local administration. So I guess that's how I would put it.
Thanks.
Thank you. I can email the reps who aren't here today to get some sort of response.
All right. Should we move on then?
Sure.
Next topic. Okay. So the next topic is governance and products of the APRC, and I think Lois and Ron, you would have something to say about that. I definitely, Lois, you passed a resolution, yes?
Yes.
And Ron, did you? I'm sorry, I haven't been keeping track of.
We are working on a resolution. We used Lois's language as a base, and then we added a little bit more. I'm also collecting as much critique of the programs and course proposals as I can, and I'm going to attach it to our resolution as an addendum. So far, the English faculty have weighed in on the music studies degree, and I think the criminal justice stuff, because our second semester writing course has been completely erased from one and almost erased from the other, and leaving students with one semester of writing and without developmental, of course. And we don't believe that prepares them to write for college or to be successful in their academic career. And so we have that, and I've reached out to the other any relevant program coordinators or department chairs to see if they want to add critique to the document. And once it's all done, I will forward that to the folks at the system office. Well, we have to vote on it, obviously, but all of our faculty senate votes for the past 2 years have been unanimously opposed to anything related to consolidation. So I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Okay. And,
Can I
and
just-
Lois, I can bring up the whereas while you speak, and then Mary Beth has her hand up also. Go ahead.
I just want to ask Ron where you got the music studies thing. We only have the criminal justice, the two criminal justice
They
degrees.
added, Lois, 2 days ago, they added a whole bunch more. So there's all the automotive is now listed on the same website that the others are. All the automotive is listed. Biochemistry is listed. Music studies is listed. And I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. The other problems, there's major math problems because they don't include any of the prerequisites, and they are promising students that 60 to 61 credits, but not listing any of the prerequisites to get them into these very high level math courses that are required for biochemistry. I can't remember what's required for music, but the math is kind of a mess in these programs.
So they're sitting on that website, but have they been distributed to anybody, or they're just sitting on the website?
They're sitting on the website, but I don't think, again, this is a major confusion. Our FERC rep, okay, during this meeting, during this FAC meeting, the FERC rep emailed information saying they are no longer using the TAP process to approve things. They were simply, whatever's on that website needs to be approved by April 19th. And basically all they want is faculty to provide feedback to the APRC rep. And so they're no longer interested in using our shared governance process. And but our faculty senate had already passed a resolution telling our faculty that we would be using our shared governance process as dictated by the TAP model that the system office told the BOR and told NECHI that they were using. So I corrected I sent an email correcting our FERC rep and said, we know what the process is. Faculty Senate has established it. Our curriculum committee last week affirmed Faculty Senate's version of how this should be done. So there really shouldn't be much question.
Wow, because we don't have an APRC rep.
Yeah, well, ours told our curriculum committee that she was not representing us. She was representing the Registrar's Council. But she's listed as representing us. And then we have another junior faculty member who's just trying to, who's doing it because she was asked to. And she's the newest member of our faculty. And I think she's just trying to be invisible.
Okay, well, all right. So I have to go on that website and see what those new things are. This is just criminal justice and the 4 certificates. And I did speak with the criminal justice program coordinator at Norwalk before this was finalized. And the 4 certificates we don't even have at Norwalk, so.
Where is this website?
I'm
I
going
have
to
a
look
link
it up.
to it, right? I
I'll
have a
look it
link
up
to it
right
on
now.
the, and I
I'll
have a
get it
link
for
to
you
it.
right now.
I have a link to it on this document.
Oh, okay.
Oh, do you want me to link it right now, just to see what's
Yeah.
in there? Sure.
Yeah.
Give me a sec.
If you Google CSCU aligned programs, that's how I find it.
Okay. And are they putting out announcements when they add things?
Evidently not.
No.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. When did that happen?
Like I said, about 2 days ago.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Automotive, biochemistry. All right.
Oh, economics. I forgot about economics too.
Economics. TAP program template. General automotive. We don't have, we don't even, how would we even?
So I'll just look at your
Yeah, this is,
resolution
yeah,
in
okay.
a second.
Yeah.
So the resolution is to Norwalk Community College does not approve nor endorse the 6 degrees and certificates, and you list them.
Right.
Okay. And it was 23 to 1. Okay.
Right.
All right. And Ron, you're saying that your resolution is similar.
Yes, I think I added a couple of paragraphs. Due to my interaction with Fran Rosselli Navarra, who I asked a whole bunch of questions of the English course alignment. By the way, they're not listing the courses in that document. The courses are coming to us through, I'm not sure exactly how, but we're supposed to be reviewing courses as well. And the 200 level lit courses are out for review. And we looked at those, okay, and I said, why isn't any of this stuff, why aren't these programs coming through to us as new programs? The BOR has a very, very detailed required form that needs to fill out that has all kinds of background information that's required. I think I spoke about this at our last meeting. But I got a response from Francine saying that these aren't new programs, that despite the fact it's a new college, these are not new programs. These are aligned programs. These courses already exist, and so they're aligned programs. And so I wrote into our document, our resolution, that aligned programs do not exist under NETCHI accreditation standards, okay, and are a manufactured term. The reason they said that they were aligned and not new is because they came from existing courses and existing programs at the 12 colleges, and they came up with this program by looking at all those programs. And I indicated in the resolution that that's how all new programs are created. New programs are created by faculty doing research into programs at other institutions that are similar. And that's how you come up with a new program, in addition to doing some industry research, okay? And so aligned program is just it's just a name that they made up to avoid having to do the heavy duty work of constructing a new program. But they are constructing new programs, no doubt about it.
Maribeth?
Thanks. I just wanted to just update you on what's going on as far as ACC. First of all, I appreciate some people got back to me when I sort of sent a rushed email last week, like right before our curriculum and standards meeting, because I was, saw this on the agenda and there had not been a discussion at ACC, and I kind of felt like if I didn't have any background information, I was going to go into the meeting and people were just going to approve all of these curriculums that came through, which I believe probably would have happened had I not had some information to share. At this point, we basically, given my feedback from what the FAC has been discussing, as well as then some other questions that some people had, we kind of tabled the conversation, and then we discussed it at our whole faculty council. And then as a result of that, our dean suggested that we have Fran and Mike come to our campus to sort of give an overview of how this process is supposed to work in terms of what the campus's role is. Is it supposed to go through our governance? Is it not? Basically that information. So at this point, I'm not exactly sure what ACC is going to do. I suggested a resolution, but I think everybody wanted to wait for this meeting to happen before they made a decision. My gut feeling is that we will probably actually do the votes. And I think that, many of us will just abstain from votes if it comes to that. But I don't believe that we will end up making the decision to not, to basically not go through the process, to not vote on them one way or another. That's my guess. Again, it's very hard to tell what people are going to do at ACC sometimes, but that's kind of where we are at this point.
So I guess I'll say what happened. I'll just share what happened at Gateway's curriculum committee, because I missed my first curriculum committee ever because I was trying to multitask and made my computer malfunction. But what ended up happening was I wasn't present at all, but I think the curriculum committee, I mean, we have a lot of folks who take it very seriously and felt that they could not vote on something that had not been reviewed by the departments. So they want the departments to look at it and bring it to curriculum. but with full knowledge that if we go through that process, we're basically going to be on the outside of having any say in it because we'll be past the deadline. So I guess in our governance meeting, we'll try to figure out what to do about that. And it might be something similar to what you all have done, which is, or, you know, what Naugatuck Valley is planning to do and what Norwalk has done in the sense of rejecting it based on the fact that we just can't deal with it. I don't know. I don't know what we'll end up doing. But that's where we were. And the curriculum committee, it wasn't even, it was simply a matter of, you know, people with all kinds of feelings about participation and non-participation. It really wasn't about that. It was just about how could we in good conscience have anything to say about a program, you know, when none of us are in this this field, right? So that's where we were. Go ahead, Lois.
I just want to say that I don't think at all that they are going to listen to or read or care about any of these resolutions. My feeling is that I want it in writing so that we can, I think at some point, and as I said to my people at Norwalk, is that NETCHI has to start hearing from us. They have to start hearing from us. They're hearing nothing. They have to start hearing from us. And these are the kinds of things that they need to hear. So I don't at all believe that what, you know, that resolution that went through Norwalk is worth the paper it's written on for the Board of Regents or for System Office. They're not the audience anymore. They're just not.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I've just been looking at that website, which is quite interesting. And so I downloaded the computed tomography course, right? Which I thought, well, that's pretty sophisticated. And it's what I notice is it's a certificate, but it's clearly identified as the Middlesex Community College Computed Tomography Program. This isn't an aligned program which can be taught anywhere. It's pretty clear that you need some specialists to do this. I mean, if someone's going to do CAT scan on me, and I've had one already, and well, hopefully not too many more, I would like them to have actually got it from the people who are specialists in that program, and it appears to be, strictly speaking, at Middlesex. How is this then included? The question I have is, how is this included as an aligned program? Clearly, this cannot be taught anywhere else but at Middlesex, unless I'm completely uninformed about the number of faculty who are experts in computed tomography. I'm not one.
Oh, I was going to start teaching that next week.
Well, the other thing too is that we do have a radiology tech program, but our radiology tech coordinator's on our curriculum committee, and he looked at some of these programs and said the worst thing they can see is that they don't address any courses in safety, and there's nothing more important to radiology than ensuring the safety of the patient and the operator of the machinery, because you're dealing with radioactivity. And he said these certificates don't address FDA requirements whatsoever. And so he had a big issue with that, even if it's something that he could offer. He said, you know, it's completely inadequate. And that's what happens when you try to merge all this stuff and you're looking at the lowest common denominator, is that you leave out things that are critical for the students to know.
Interesting point.
Mary Beth, is your hand still up? Or, I mean, again, or, okay. All right, so I will include that resolution as one of our documents and try to post it on the FAC thing and try to make sure that it's circulated in some logical way. We still have to get that down, but make sure we share it. All right. If nothing else, let's move on to missed payroll and other back office messes. Anyone? I know that at Gateway, we are, I know that our union people from the union are trying to gather information about how many people had missed paychecks. Some of our student workers apparently are not being paid, adjuncts and so on. So it's a little alarming. We also got an email from HR saying that they're kind of inundated with stuff, so don't ask them about certain things right now because they're not going to be able to do them. And yeah, and apparently, if I'm not mistaken, the IT mess from the beginning of the year has continued. We're just used to it now. Well, part of it has continued. Is that correct? Are people still having to clear their cache?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as alarming as it was, but like at least that part has just kind of lingered with us. Okay.
Well, they're in there, and
Go
there's
ahead.
still students who are having difficulty getting into their courses, the ones that are late registration courses. Late start.
Oh, this is a good place to ask because my department is trying to figure this out. Blackboard's acting funny. Like certain settings are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Putting images in exams, is that one of them?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Not working. There's a plus sign at the very bottom on the right of the text editor. You can click on that plus sign and you should be able to get an image in there. But yes, it has been, the reports structure wasn't working, and now I believe it just started working again. Yeah, there's been a lot of things with Blackboard.
For me, the toughest part, and I know some people in my department have some issues with the grading, but giving students extra time that they're allowed has just been malfunctioning. So I have students taking exams and not having the amount of time they're supposed to have. So anyway, just from around, is anyone else is the payroll issue widespread, or is that just Gateway? Who's getting that issue?
My understanding is it's pretty widespread because I was at a union meeting, and I don't remember whether it was delegate assembly or what kind of union meeting it was, but it was more than Norwalk, and there were a lot of people complaining about both the students not getting paid properly and adjuncts not getting money, or waiting 6 weeks for their first check, that kind of thing. So, and I've heard it at Norwalk as well. So I think it's pretty widespread.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Anything
know of
else?
at least one colleague at Tunxis who received half her pay.
Mm.
I also have an HR story if you want it. I was invited to a search charge by some person I don't know, some regional HR person. I got an email at 6:37 p.m. Wednesday evening. Luckily, I was checking my email at that hour, and I was invited to the search charge for 9 a.m. this morning. Now, I could have gone, but of course, I had no intention of going. This email went to 32 people. So I now have the names of all the people on the various search committees, which I think probably should be confidential. So that went to everybody.
Interesting.
And also I have the questions which are going to be asked of the candidates for the searches, except not the search I'm on because I didn't get that. So it is all screwed up.
For sure. I mean, I spoke to people, to someone just recently who was, I think this is a constant problem at Gateway. Nobody knows who to ask.
Yeah.
Anything, who to call, or even what the list of names is to ask who they should ask. There's certainly at least one professional file that was requested that has not been delivered for over a month. So yeah, you really get the impression that it's just not clear who does what. And it was my it was reported to me. I don't know if this is definitely the case, but a lot of the HR reshuffling was done without regard to people's specialties. It was just done like it was just bodies without thinking about people's actual knowledge base. And this could be part of it. And I'm sure it's not fun for the people working in HR either.
Yeah, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm sure it isn't. And they're getting slammed with loads and loads of retirements coming through. So not an easy time. All right, so is there anything else that we need to talk about with that? I keep promising that form. I don't think I ever sent you the revised form. I'll send it.
I can go for one. I had a student the other day contact me saying that she had contacted, I don't know, 5 or 6 other people beforehand, and she was handed off from one to another, to another, to another, to another. And she couldn't get into her class, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. It was a public speaking class. And could I help her? Finally, somebody gave me somebody gave her my email address. So it turned out all I did was go into Banner and look up her schedule, and she was no longer in the public speaking classes. My guess is that she was dropped for non-participation and was never told. And she did at one point go to her instructor, and an instructor told her to go to IT, and that's where she started being handed off from one person to another person to another person. And she's been going around in circles for a couple of weeks on this.
You say that, and you remind me of the fact that there were several part-timers that I had to find information from them that they'd been waiting months for from HR so that they could begin their semester. And it's easily found, but nobody knew who to who to get it from.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So it is chaos. For sure. All right.
And then there's March 26th coming up when most of student services will be reporting to God knows who.
That's right. Does anybody else have any? I'm just very confused about that. I've heard the board presentations on it. They sounded really like wonderful. There were personal conversations had, etc. And then I heard other people talking about exactly the same situation and did not recognize that they were talking about the same situation because they were talking about having to reapply for their own jobs, not knowing how to do it, etc. The two situations sounded like different universes, but apparently it's the same thing. And that means that on March 26th, these folks who are still trying to figure that out are going to be kind of lurched into a new system. So I guess there'll be more to talk about.
Well, that should be a total nightmare.
Yeah, well, that part will start to directly affect our students. So like more directly, because Anything else before we move on? Okay. FAC conference update. Anyone want to take this from me? I'm happy to do it, but and I'm looking for what I sent to everyone for my own update. Anyone? So here's, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I thought someone was speaking. Is someone just not muted? Okay. Let me see if I can, off the top of my head, just tell you quickly what's happening. So it's April 16th. We have confirmed, so it's going to be set up as 2 different panels. And it will be, the first panel is, give me 1 second, actually. The first panel will be Stephen Breyer. And I'm going to share my screen so I can advertise while we're talking. Right, so the first panel is going to be Stephen Breyer, who wrote Austerity Blues. It talks about the effects of austerity on higher ed. The second, so the panel will be Jennifer Middlestat, who works with the New Deal for Higher Ed, who talks about responses to this sort of austerity issue. And Shari Wolf, who does a lot of work with things like bargaining for the common good, etc. So the general themes are austerity, neoliberalism, reclaiming shared governance, and democracy at work. So we'll start the conversation with that at the beginning of the day, and then a little break, and in the afternoon, another panel that will be members of our own community. So I know that Stephen Adair will be there as first FAC chair, someone who's very familiar with the sort of trends in our system. I believe Estela Lopez, is that right, Lois?
Yes.
Okay. So there'll be 4 folks total, I believe, responding to these issues in the system and talking about how the sort of more general topics that were discussed in the beginning can be sort of applied to our system. So it hopefully will be a nice, healthy discussion for us to have. Again, it's April 16th, it will begin at 10. I will end at 2. There'll be a nice little lunch break in the middle. And I see Mike's hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. I actually was going to ask what you just said. I don't think the flyer says the times. So thank you for telling me it's 10 to 2. And maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it in the flyer.
No, and this is just a matter of we kind of got insanely busy. So the save the date went out through the system. It took a while, but it was sent out as a link, which was not particularly helpful. You had to click on it to actually see the information. So hopefully the next thing that goes out will be a little bit more easily visible, but it will have an ability to RSVP, and we'll have the details of the time and so on. I think we were still juggling it. So yep, 10 to 2.
Thank you very much.
Yes, great. All right, any questions on that or any more discussion on that, or should we move on? I'm looking for our own. Okay. And that's Mary Beth coming in and out with connection problems. Was there anything you wanted to mention, Mary Beth, or are you okay?
Good, thanks.
Okay. All right, FAC elections. So I have emailed all of the governance leaders in the 12 colleges, reminding them. I did that at the beginning of the month on the 1st. I intend to maybe follow up. The 15th would have been a good time, but it's also spring break. I'm not sure how effective that'll be, but I'll try to follow up again to just remind folks, because again, we have the 2-step process for the CCs, so we need to get it done so we can run that this semester, whereas the universities, it's not that big a deal. They can do it at the beginning of the next. So please do remind your governance leaders, or remember if you're as Senate leaders, to get those elections done as soon as possible, because I'm hoping that we can run the statewide portion of it at the end of next month, by the end of next month. That should be sufficient, right, Barbara? Is she there? Okay, I'm not sure, but I think
I'm here. No, it depends on what these heads of the governance organizations actually do. I don't know what they'll do. You know. Yeah, it's a nice idea. If it's by the end of next month, that would be good.
Okay.
I already sent out a call for nominations. So
great.
At least at MVCC, we have a call out for nominations.
Nice. Yeah. And just a reminder, because I feel like it's a weird quirk of the way that we do it that folks might want to keep in mind when they're putting things out. So it's basically faculty gets the first shot, and if your faculty member doesn't get first alternate or voting member in that first round, then the staff person could have a seat. So it's the highest ranking staff person at a college that doesn't already have a voting seat or a first alternate seat. So think about that if you kind of know who you want to put forward, or if you want a staff person, like, think about how that works out, because you should put forward at least one name. You may decide to put forward one, you may decide to put forward two. Okay.
I just want to say one thing about the election, which is the way things work, the kind of expertise you gradually develop on this group. It would be really good if a lot of current members continued, or at least wanted to and ran for it. It's hard when you're starting from scratch, with brand new people. So that's all. And besides, I just think we have a great group. So I hope a lot of the same people come back again.
Yeah, I should say that I'm kind of hoping it's us again. So thanks. All right. Are we good on that? Okay. Documents received. So we have the Norwalk resolution. I'll make sure that that's logged. Is there anything else that we might want to have that might be of system-wide interest?
Kalina, are you posting? And I don't know whether this is relevant, but we did have conversation. It was on the agenda today. Are you posting the videos from the hearings this week? The link to the videos. I wonder if is that something we should post or not?
So I have March 4th through March 9th. Those are right on our agenda. So that's one way to get to them. But yeah, I can also do that. I can post them separately so that once we get the resolutions or events or whatever portion done, I'll make sure to include that. But right now, you can get to it through the agenda, and I'm hoping that in the minutes, we'll include the March 11th video also. Yeah. All right. So I am hoping that in the future, our agenda contains a good amount of information that you can get to through the links, and then the minutes will also contain that and anything that we approve in these meetings. So we'll see. Okay, so that's done. Just one thing, the Norwalk resolution. Look at this. I'm about to impress David today. Old or new business?
I do have one question, if you can put up with it this hour.
Oh, yeah.
Do we, I don't understand it. It may be that I haven't read something I should have read. How we ended up with on the system shared governance question of whether there's going to be a system-wide Senate, system-wide curriculum committee, and whether and when. Are we still stuck with that's supposed to be 2023? Is that the idea?
So CCIC meetings, right? So the coordinating sort of committee above SFASACC that goes straight to the board, right? For the consolidation.
Right.
Every month lately, or the past couple months, those meetings have been canceled. So.
Oh my goodness.
That would be, yeah. So they're usually exactly like 1 hour and very little discussion, but we're not even having them right now. That would be the place that we'd have the most up-to-date information. So I haven't gotten that. The last update I got was from Mike Stefanowicz at the ASA meeting last month. And I think the way that I reported it out was basically like it's still in flux, because I think that conversation is still happening. My impression is that Ellie Bloom, who is the chair of both your Senate and the Shared Governance Committee, right, a work group, my impression from what she said at a previous presentation was that she seems to think that both the Senate and the Curriculum Committee for the Consolidated College should come into existence in 2022. That's her feeling. But the way that the policy was written was that the Senate would come into existence in the Curriculum Committee would come into existence in 2022. And this, which is a big win, considering, right, compared with what it was supposed to be. But not that relevant, because it was supposed to happen in 2023, and then the Senate wouldn't come into existence till 2023, right? So the curriculum committee comes into existence 1 year before the Senate because they're treating aligned programs, as Ron said, they're treating aligned programs as if they're not new programs, and they're saying that the APRC that's not a curriculum committee is sufficient to just review them, and it's fine because they're not new. And then the new programs will be reviewed by the new curriculum committee as of 2023. But the thing is, the Senate is supposed to be there to handle disputes and appeals, etc. And if you think about it, the programs that are most likely to have disputes and appeals are the ones that are merged from many different campuses who don't agree about what the final product should actually be. And there is no body in place to handle that. Right now, I think just by the system office, somebody there will just decide what it'll be. So that's kind of just where it stood last I heard, that conversation is still happening, and it's acknowledged that even the chair of the committee seems to think that they should both come into existence in 2022. But I don't think that decision has officially been made yet.
Thank you.
If I recall from the document which we received, the curriculum committee, as proposed, or the curriculum congress, I think they call it, would be 18 faculty, 3 each from the 6 areas of studies with no more than 1 per discipline, along with 5 professional staff, 2 non-voting administrators, and 3 students. And it strikes me that that's an extremely small number of faculty to represent the diversity of programs, consolidated, aligned or not, that exist. So I mean, that's one problem. And then when you look at the college senate, faculty would be in a minority. There'd be 12 faculty, 1 each from each campus, right? And you don't even have a mesh. You have the 6 areas of so-called mega areas of study in terms of the curriculum committee. But then when they do the proposal, that at least the one that I saw for college senate, it was by campus, 12 faculty, 12 professional classified staff, and 3 students. So the teaching faculty would actually be a minority in the Senate, which is completely contrary to what happens, for example, at the level of the universities. So, I mean, it's incoherent.
Well, I've felt for a long time that they want to have staff able to outvote faculty because they have direct control over staff in a way they don't over faculty. So therefore, they can control the committee.
Yeah. Well, we in our December annual report to the board, we criticized both of those proposals as clearly inadequate.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Right. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Myrna.
And of course, there's a failure of proportional representation for larger campuses relative to small ones.
It has nothing to do with the conversation, so I will refrain from asking until the conversation is totally vetted.
Well, I'm done.
Well, I'll just throw this in. I made a point of saying, because my name was attached, I think a few of us had our names attached to the proposal, and we kind of objected and asked for our names to be removed, because when it comes to these structural issues, right, it's the details that matter. I mean, it's structural. You have one piece missing and the whole thing falls apart. And that's, we were never present for those sorts of conversations about the correct balance, the proportion, and the timing, and the workflow. Like, none of that was something that we participated in. So, yeah, there are a lot of concerns, and I'm not sure exactly how the final thing is put together, like where the conversations happen at this point. But it does seem that there's some consideration being had. Go ahead, Lois, and I don't want to.
That's okay. That's okay if it's a part of this conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was the one that sent, there were, I think, 10 names that I sent to David Levinson and said we wanted our names taken off of this document because we did not participate in the final document, and he came back and he said no.
Right. And can I just ask, Barbara, so, and you're just asking because you're wanting to know what's coming down the line, or have you heard anything? Because you might have more information than we do since the chair is at your college.
I'm just have a feeling that people up at the top there are trying to create a system they can continue to totally control. And that chair is one piece of it, but having faculty treated as if they were I don't know that I mean we have the same issue at Housatonic that our Senate got to be more staff votes than faculty because the way it was originally written, we didn't have as many staff. Now, especially with guided pathways, there'll be many, many, many more staff, but every staff member, it gets evaluated frequently, gets, you know, is working for promotion up different ladders and different steps much more often than faculty members. They have tremendous amount of control, and then they bring a lot of staff up to the system office and say, well, those are staff, they're just on loan to the system office, and they're able to then outvote anything the faculty has to say, and that's what they hope to continue to do. I'm very concerned about this, and I think a lot depends on who comes in as the new system president, if they have any understanding of academic standards or academic freedom or role of faculty, any of that, or not. And then the legislature has another piece of this, and NETCHI has another piece. But right now, it looks to me like the proposals, they intend to have a small group of arrogant people in the system office control everything.
Yeah.
Does anybody disagree with that?
No, and you know, because the system is so half-baked and not thought through, it will not function probably. And at the risk of sounding cynical, the system office is simply going to approve the policies or the programs or whatever that it, you know, especially the things that they see as priorities. They're simply going to bypass the system and maybe let the faculty tinker around with things they don't care about. And I'm sorry for sounding so cynical, but we've got plenty of evidence to suggest that that's what's going to happen.
Well, I think the other thing is that we're going to see those people who up at the system office trying to make their careers by generating statistics that look good. And one way you do that is pressure faculty to pass more people and teach less stuff. And all this is going to be very bad for our students. I'm sort of feeling pretty bleak about all that stuff, but we do have more. Some people will leave, hopefully, and some people will come. Some of the personnel will change, and then we have the legislature. I think it's great that people are working with the legislature, and there's real hope there. Those people are elected.
Yeah, I think. I mean, this also echoes back to the conversation with Representative Vail, right? Because the real issue is that faculty have a measure of protection that staff don't have. So this is less about a disease.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
More about work in a threatening environment at this point, right? And I feel awful.
I mean, they are, in fact, we know they are threatening faculty, and they've made promotion such a sort of political thing that's hard, but especially senior faculty get more freedom to speak without worrying too much.
And certain campuses.
And it doesn't happen with staff. Staff, if they do really well, they get to become administrators. You know, they're working their way up to these higher level places where they can boss people around. I mean, I don't like to speak against staff because we have some incredibly wonderful staff people, and I love to work with them on committees and things, and they know all kinds of stuff, but not as a majority because then they can be ordered around.
Yeah, and we also so David, you keep repeating the phrase like faculty control over curriculum, but this structure doesn't really allow for that.
Nope.
Correct.
Yeah. So I mean, look, we've been trying to get out the message that we feel that we have no control. And to a certain extent, that structure is documentation, that's the way that we're
Right.
going. The only thing is that it's very hard to convey to someone who doesn't really understand how,
They plan to make it permanent.
yeah, how these things usually work. It doesn't convey, but it's clear, yeah.
And that's to go back to David's TAP conversation, right? Unless and until there is a structure in place that allows for this stuff to allows faculty to maintain control in a formal institutional way, then it's kind of dangerous to work on this stuff. We need to have that systemic, documented shared governance system and process in place for what we create to have meaning, to have institutional meaning, right? To have legal or legitimacy, right? That needs to be in place. Otherwise, what we're creating is something that does not have the foundation of an institutional order of shared governance.
Right.
Yeah, because right now it's just down to the level of control we get, or the level of autonomy we get, is down to personalities, right? Different colleges, I'm at Gateway, and at the moment, we have a lot of struggles, but at least I don't feel threatened, right? But clearly, I told you, I received all those, emails since then, or contacts since then, to let me know that some people do. So, yeah.
You know what? I've had this on my mind for some time, and this is a double-edged sword. I know it is. How about a survey of the faculty? Do you feel threatened? I mean, we can flesh that out, obviously. Do you feel intimidated? Do you feel silenced? Do you feel like you can't openly express your views on things? And I know that's potentially dangerous, depending on the results.
Right.
Yeah, this came up at AFT this morning, our AFT meeting this morning. And, the response that people agreed was that, don't ask questions you don't already know the answer to. If the question could hurt you. So, that's part of the problem. Although, I suspect, at least at Nogda Valley, I'm pretty confident the results would not, blow up in our face, but.
Yeah, me too. At
But
Tunxus.
at the same time, I think the fear that people have is due to the fact that we keep having examples of our CEOs having such little authority. And so, so in many of our institutions, and I guess I'll give into your expertise on Tunxus, Fran, of course. But I think for many of us, our CEOs are not the problem. Our local administration is not the problem. It's that the fact that they seem to be simply conduits for what's coming from somewhere else. That's the problem, because then, our promotion decisions, our tenure decisions, our HR decisions, are those coming from well, HR obviously now is coming from somewhere else, right? But are those coming from somewhere else? And who are those people, right? Who are the people who are actually governing us? If it's not our CEOs, because our CEOs keep on passing along policies that they tell us privately they don't agree with.
David, sorry, Stoloff, is this on this topic? Because I know Myrna's waiting to talk about something else also.
Hi, Myrna, I'll be brief.
Sure.
Is it true, just for some reality check, is it true that there aren't any department chairs in the community colleges?
No, we still have chairs.
But that is the plan down the line, yes, for the consolidated college.
But you still have, yeah, right, that's the plan down the line, because they're doing that with they'd like to do that with the CSUs also.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next step. The reality is that the people who are negotiating now don't care if they see this as a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they want to run it as a business model.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who's running the personnel office at the system office came from business. So he wants to run it as a business, and he doesn't want faculty to have a time. I'm really, I'm really very happy that there are some people, legislators, that are willing to fight back. And that has a lot to do with political action, right? A lot to do with the political action, and that we supported a lot of them with our political action committees. That's the reality we're faced with. Sorry, Myrna.
And I'm going to say sorry, Maria. Just one more thing I want to throw in there for in our consideration of like this perceived, like faculty and staff are certainly living in different worlds, right? Because the staff structure is being shifted as we speak, and some of the classifications of our staff are shifting. And in addition to threatened, there's also incentive structure that we have to take into consideration, right? It's not just that you may feel threatened, but you might see legitimately that if you're going to stay in the system, the only path to advancement is X, and that requires ingratiating yourself to Y. And it's basic survival, and it has nothing to do with principle or anything else. And it's perfectly understandable on an individual level, but when you put it all together, it could spell something unhealthy for the collective, right? So you hear these conversations of folks who are making decisions that may actually ultimately be against their own interests, but in the immediate, it's the only kind of way of staying afloat. So I'm going to say, like, you say that we have someone. Oh, actually, I don't know if I want to talk about all of that, but all I'm saying is that there are people who understand how to work with HR to produce certain effects, and we're here, and it's either by accident or it's not. I don't know. All right.
I did want to add to the conversation, not to this conversation, that just in listening to everyone, I'm just wondering, we hear about some of the legislators that are working on our behalf, right? Or at least have some kind of understanding. What is the thought of this body about potentially having like a legislative breakfast or something where we can voice our concerns and what we're experiencing to a legislative body, and we have to select the legislators that potentially have a background in that have had exposure, either themselves or their children, to community colleges and the CSU. You know, their bios are online, and why not make a concerted effort to invite them as a body? Say, we would like to have you. And one of the thoughts that came to mind is, I know we start our conference at 10 o'clock, but you know, we could have a legislative breakfast prior to the conference, and that would rein them in. Or after, you know, have like a roundtable discussion with the legislators, but make a concerted effort to get them more involved and more informed so that they can continue to support us as we move forward. Because I heard repeatedly in our conversation how the legislators supported us. It's great that they're getting to know a little bit more. The more they know, the more I'm hoping they could put the pressure on the powers that be, those who are controlling, to maybe think this through a little better and be more inclusive. That's just a thought.
That sounds great, Myrna. I mean, do you want to help plan that? I mean, it could be part of the conference committee, but it could also be separate. Would anybody like to participate in sort of selecting those folks and creating an event to invite them to?
I mean, why not?
Okay.
We could start with the Higher Education Committee.
Perfect.
Yeah. Sure.
And it doesn't have to be an invitation to everybody. There's hundreds of people involved, but we could certainly begin with the Higher Education Committee and the Consolidation Committee. Invite them.
Yeah.
This would be this would be a virtual breakfast, I take it.
Of course. It's. I'm just saying that. Yes, absolutely. Tell them to bring their coffee.
Although I've had my second shot now. In 2 weeks. I'm on the loose, and I'm looking forward to coffees with all of you, as each of you individually, those of you in the area around me, Mike, for example, and many others, I got to wait 2 more weeks for the stuff to
Oh.
percolate from the mRNA to the DNA or whatever it does.
Anyway, that's a thought, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we get closer and maybe on the
Yeah.
committee to see. And then the other thing I did want to say, which does relate to the conference, is my union is wondering where to send the check. And when they're offering money, I don't want to delay anymore. And I saw that Central has an account, so I need to make sure I know what that account, what's the name of the account? David, did you
Okay,
create?
yes. And Stephen's name is on it.
Oh, so to Steve Adair?
Yeah. Yes, and I'll make sure you have the number as soon as we get off of here.
Excellent.
Great,
Thank
great.
you.
All right. So now that we have established that David is on the loose,
Almost.
movement to anyone, like, should we adjourn?
So
Motion?
moved.
All right.
Stop the camera.
We're free. That's right.
I put in a quick announcement about a radio program tomorrow.
Should I
Go ahead.
stop the recording, or is this something you want?
No, I think it could be recorded.
Okay, go ahead.
The announcement about, it's in the chat. Radio
Okay,
Program Resistance Roundup, WEKN,
okay.
tomorrow morning. There, Cindy Stetch, I think some people might know her. We'll
Yep.
be talking about Student First and the CSU AUP contract negotiations.
That's great. Thank you.
Excellent.
All righty. And I'm stopping the recording now.